When I told my sister that I would keep the baby I was carrying for her, she looked at me as if I had ruined her life. That same evening, there was a blue folder on the table with the word contract written on it, and the phone wouldn't stop ringing lawyers, messages, threats. A month ago, I believed I was doing good. Now everyone calls me a traitor. Claire and I were never close, but after her miscarriage, I saw her fall apart. She didn't leave the house, avoided people, said she was no longer a woman. I was healthy, had a stable job, and normal test results. It seemed it was the right thing to do, to help my sister become a mother. I signed the contract without even reading the fine print. Derek, her husband, stood next to me, held the pen, and said, "It's just a formality. Just paperwork." A month later, we were sitting in the doctor's office. On the screen was a dark spot, a small movement, a heartbeat. And then, the phrase that changed everything. "We have detected a rare genetic trait. Additional tests are needed." The doctor spoke calmly, without emotion. Claire squeezed the armrest so hard that her fingers turned white. Derek looked down at his phone. I tried to breathe, but my head was already echoing with what if. After the appointment, we drove home in silence. In the clinic hallway, Claire said, "This could be serious. If it's confirmed, we won't be able to continue." Her voice trembled, but not from fear, from the decision she had already made. I only replied, "There's a heart beating in there." I heard it. She said nothing. That evening, I looked at the same blue folder labeled contract and realized for the first time, this was no longer about help. It was about a life that someone wanted to erase from the world because it was easier that way. The results came in 4 days later. I was sitting in the kitchen when the doctor called. His voice was short, dry, without any "unfortunately." "There is a possibility of the syndrome, but it is low. We recommend a repeat analysis." I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. After the call, I sat with the phone in my hands for a long time. Cold coffee, the TV playing quietly. When Claire and Derek arrived, I explained everything, word for word. Claire whispered, as if she were talking to herself rather than to me, "I can't take another loss. Not this time." I said calmly, "It's not a diagnosis. It's just a risk." She looked me straight in the eye. "You don't understand. I can't go through this again." Derek was silent. Then he said, "We can't ruin her life." I asked, "What about mine?" He didn't answer. They packed their things and left. I stood by the window, watching the car disappear around the bend, and for the first time I felt that there was something more than duty inside me. The next day, Claire sent a short message. "We've decided to stop everything. It's not safe." I reread it several times. I replied with one word, "No." The silence lasted 3 days. Then Derek called. "Emma, be reasonable. We can't leave this to the child." I could hear his voice trembling, but not with compassion, with fear. He wasn't afraid of loss, but of scandal. "It's not it," I said. "It's a child." He sighed and hung up. I didn't sleep much that night. I stared at the ceiling, listened to the heating clicking in the apartment, and realized that everything had already been decided between us. I chose life. They chose peace. They called me in to talk. Sunday, 11 a.m., my parents' kitchen. On the table was a lemon cake and a lot of tension that smelled like coffee. Claire was already there. She was sitting upright, her arms crossed. Next to her was Derek, looking like a lawyer. Mom was wearing a towel on her head after her shower. Dad was standing by the window. No one was looking directly at each other. "Emma," Mom begins, "we all want this to end well. But you have to be smart." Be smart has always meant accept it in our family. Claire speaks in a businesslike tone. "The contract is clear. If there are risks, the procedure is terminated. We'll make sure you're compensated for your expenses." Derek adds, without even looking at me, "No one wants to hurt you. We just have to do what's right." I put the ultrasound photo on the table. A small gray spot, blurry but real. "This isn't a statistic," I say quietly. "This is someone." Mom looks away. Claire presses her lips together. "If you give birth," she says, "it will be someone else's problem. Not mine." Her voice is steady as steel. She gets up, takes her coat, and I realize that for her, it's over. For me, it's just beginning. When the door closed behind them, Dad sat down opposite me and said, almost in a whisper, "Honey, you can't beat this system. They're stronger." I smiled. Not out of courage, but out of exhaustion. "We'll see," I replied. 2 days later, Derek left Claire's place. He didn't call me. Only a courier knocked on my door. Documents for Mr. Derek. I handed him a blue folder with copies of test results and insurance, the things he had once asked me to keep just in case. When the elevator closed, the apartment became unnaturally quiet. His scent lingered on the table, coffee with cinnamon, which had seeped into the scarf he had forgotten last fall. I walked through the rooms as if after a fire. Everything was in place, but something invisible had burned out. When the door closed, it became unnaturally quiet. Even the refrigerator stopped humming. His scent remained in the apartment, perfume and coffee with cinnamon. I walked through the rooms as if after a fire. Everything was in its place, but something invisible had burned out. A blue folder lay on the nightstand, contract. Next to it was a white envelope with Claire's company logo. I didn't open it right away, just twirled it in my hands for a long time. Inside was a letter with no salutation. "We hereby notify you of the termination of the agreement. If the pregnancy continues, the embryo cannot be used. Any action will be considered a breach of contract." At the end was Claire's signature. Smooth, neat, cold. Like a signature on a bank document. I read it twice. The third time, I read it aloud. Then I took a black marker and wrote in large letters right over the title, "I'm staying." The marker bled through the cover, leaving a black stain even on the table. And for some reason, it seemed honest to me. There are things that should leave a mark. I made tea, but couldn't drink it. Then I took out a notebook and started writing what needs to be done. The first item was clinic. The second was lawyer. The third was bill. My hand was shaking, but I wrote everything down. Even the little things, the pharmacy, the taxi, the insurance reminder. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the sofa, wrapped in a blanket that smelled of laundry detergent, and listened to someone walking their dog outside the window. The world went on. And for the first time, I felt that now there were two of us, me and him. A little heart inside that doesn't ask for permission to beat. I thought about Claire, about Derek, about our dinners when we all sat at the same table and talked about our shared dream. And I realized they never saw me as a person. Just an incubator, part of a scheme, a line in a contract. When dawn broke outside, I looked at the folder again. Blue cover, black word, leaving. I knew that from this moment on, there was no turning back. And for the first time, I felt not fear, but calm. The kind that comes when you've already made your choice. The clinic smelled of antiseptic and coffee from the vending machine. There was no queue, but I had to wait a long time, probably because the doctor was searching for the right words. When he finally came out, I was already holding my hands under the table so that no one could see them shaking. "Emma," he said, sitting down opposite me, "after implantation, the final decision always rests with the carrier. That's the law." I took a slow breath so as not to cry right there in the office. "So, can I continue?" "Yes. But you must understand," his voice lowered, "this is a non-standard situation medically. We will inform the ordering party of your position." I nodded. "Let them know." He slid the form over. Date, signature, mark, consent to continue. I wrote my full name, without abbreviations, as if someone's fate depended on it. Before I left, he stopped me at the door. "You know, not all doctors will say this out loud, but..." He hesitated a little. "Sometimes the right decision doesn't match what's in the contract." I thanked him and left. For the first time in all this time, someone didn't lecture me, but simply supported me. The lawyer's office was cold, the air conditioning was on full blast. On the table was a stack of files, a cup of coffee, and tired eyes. She listened attentively, without interrupting. "I have a contract with my sister. They want to terminate the pregnancy." I put the folder in front of her. "But I've decided to keep the baby." She looked through the documents. Her fingers quickly turned the pages, her eyes scanning the text. "Interesting." She looked up. "Have they already filed a lawsuit?" "Not yet, but they're threatening to." "The contract isn't the main thing here," she said calmly. "It's a framework. And when there's a pregnancy, The main thing isn't the contract, but the best interests of the child. That's the basic principle. They didn't have time to file a pre-birth order, a preliminary court decision determining paternity before birth. In our district, if there is no such decision, the rights of the surrogate and the best interests of the child take priority. That is why even genetic parents cannot demand termination of the pregnancy or transfer of the baby without the consent of the woman carrying it. I was silent. She took a sip of coffee and added, "They can pressure you, scare you, publish something in the media. But the law is on your side. You are not breaking any rules." She handed me a sheet of paper. "This is a plan of action. Step by step, protection of personal data, official statement to the clinic, registration with the Single Mothers Support Fund." Her calmness strangely reassured me. When I left the office, it was already dusk. Rain fell on my hair and I suddenly felt lighter. Not good, but lighter. That same evening, Julia called me from work. "Have you seen the news?" I didn't understand what she was talking about. I opened my phone. On the screen was an article, "Sister Against Sister. Child by Contract." A photo from my birthday, Claire and I, smiling, happy. Caption: "A source close to the family confirms the conflict." I was shaking. I turned off my phone, then turned it back on because I couldn't stand it, read a few more comments, and turned it off again. The room went dark. Only the blue cover of the folder glowed on the table. I put my hand on my stomach and whispered, "I won't give you to anyone." After that post, everything changed. At work, people looked at me differently, not with hostility, but with that uncomfortable curiosity that makes you want to hide. In the lunchroom, someone whispered about that surrogacy story, pretending I couldn't hear. A week later, I was called to HR. The manager spoke in a prepared voice. "We have to downsize the department." "It's nothing personal." There was a box for my belongings on the table, a small one with the company logo. I packed everything in 5 minutes, my cup, notebook, flash drive. As I was leaving, a colleague nodded to me but didn't say a word. I went outside and laughed. Silently. Because laughing was easier than crying. The days became identical. Morning tea, a short walk, then hours on the laptop. I was looking for a job and at the same time keeping notes, a letter to my child. I wrote simple things that I love, that I'm not afraid, that she's not to blame. Sometimes I imagined that one day he would read it. There was a sheet of paper on the refrigerator, a list of things I need. Vitamins, a pillow for sleeping, a doctor's consultation. Each item was a small victory, proof that I was moving forward, even when it seemed like I was standing still. At night, anxiety would roll in. I would turn on the nightlight, sit on the bed, and count my breaths. At some point, I started talking out loud, as if to someone. "We'll make it. We'll definitely make it." Sometimes I caught myself thinking that what I was missing wasn't Derek, but the feeling that there was someone nearby to hold my hand when I was scared. One evening, Derek called. I didn't recognize the number right away. "Emma," he said, "I'm sorry. I just can't support this. It's all too much." "I'm not asking for support," I replied. "Just don't get in the way." Pause. "You're making a mistake." I hung up. No shouting, no tears. For the first time, his words didn't affect me. A few days later, Julia, a colleague with whom we rarely communicated, rang the doorbell. In her hands, she held a container of pasta and a bottle of non-alcoholic wine. "You probably haven't eaten all day," she said, walking into the kitchen as if she had always lived there. We sat on the floor, eating straight from the container, and she listened silently. When I finished, she simply said, "If you need someone to go to the doctor with, I'm with you." It sounded more important than everything will be fine. At night, I opened my laptop again. I created a new document, Plan B. There were 3 points: find a new job, switch to a public clinic, open a separate account. And one more: survive. Before going to bed, I wrote a few lines to my child. Today I realized that we are not alone. We will have a life, even if no one believes it. My phone flashes with new headlines. Someone is discussing me in the comments. Someone is writing nonsense. I press delete app and turn off the screen. Then I put my hand on my stomach and whisper, "You are not their scandal. You are my silence." Labor started earlier than expected. 27th week, I was packing things for the new apartment when I felt a pain in my lower abdomen. At first, I thought it was something minor, then, just nerves. But the pain returned, and this time it didn't go away. I called a taxi. The driver was silent while I clutched my seatbelt and counted my breaths. He helped me out in front of the reception and left a bottle of water on the seat. A small act of human kindness at a moment when I wanted to disappear. In the maternity ward, everything merged into a continuous sound. The beeps of monitors, the noise in the corridor, strangers' voices saying, "Just a little longer." Someone was holding my hand, I don't even remember who. I only remember when I first heard the heartbeat. It was a sound that could not be confused with anything else. Fast, steady, persistent. Music played by life, even when everyone is against it. The labor lasted a long time. Pain, screams, then silence. And suddenly a thin sound, a short cry, like a little sign, "I'm here." They put him on my chest. Skin to skin, warm, still wet, so tiny that I was afraid to breathe, lest I scare him. The nurse said, "It's a boy. He's healthy." I couldn't answer. I just watched him move, breathe, and tried to remember every second. I named him Noah because that name sounds calm, like water. When they took him away for examination, I was left alone. The room smelled of antiseptic and new sheets. On my hand was a plastic bracelet with my last name. I turned it over and wrote Noah with a pen. Later, the doctor said that he was born with no apparent defects. Noah spent his first days under the supervision of neonatologists, who monitored his weight and breathing because he was born a little prematurely. After a few days, his vitals stabilized and he was breathing on his own. Only then did I allow myself to cry, not from pain, but from relief. Only then did I allow myself to cry. Not from pain, from relief. On the third day after discharge, there was a knock at the door. I thought it was the nurse, but Claire was standing on the doorstep. No warning, no flowers. In a coat, with her usual straight posture. Her eyes were cold. "I want to see him," she said. I held Noah close to my chest. "Why?" "Because he was supposed to be mine." Her voice didn't waver. "And I'm going to sue for wrongful birth." I didn't answer. I just rocked Noah while he slept and repeated to myself, "We survived. We're home." That night, I took his little hand again and said quietly so as not to wake him, "No one has the right to decide whether you should exist." And he squeezed my finger. A small but confident sign that it had all been worth it. I received the summons 2 weeks after Noah was born. The envelope was thick, official, with a court stamp. Inside was a lawsuit, determination of ownership rights to the embryo and illegal birth of a child. I read it 3 times. Even the lawyer, when I showed her the documents, shrugged. They called him an embryo, even though he's alive and has a birth certificate. Cynical, but not surprising. The court date was set quickly. Claire wasted no time. On the day of the hearing, I stood outside the building with a baby bottle in my bag. "Noah stayed with Julia," she said. "I'll be fine. Go and get this over with." The room smelled of dust and coffee from the vending machine. There weren't many people, but they all watched as if they were watching a movie. Claire sat across from me. She had perfect hair, a gray suit, and a gaze that didn't stop on anyone. Next to her was Derek. He didn't look at me or the floor. He just sat there. And that hurt the most. Claire's lawyer stepped forward confidently. "Your Honor, we are dealing with genetic property. My client provided the egg, her husband provided the sperm. This child has their DNA. The defendant is only a surrogate carrier who violated the terms of the contract." The lawyer representing me stood up. "Your Honor, a contract is not above the law. From the moment of implantation, the carrier acquires the rights of a mother. Moreover, we are not talking about an embryo, but a living child. We are talking about his best interests, not genetic property." The judge listened silently, without looking up from the documents. When it was my turn, he asked, "Were you aware of the consequences of your decision?" "Yes," I replied. I was aware that I couldn't kill something that was already alive. The judge looked at me for a long time. "Was the child born healthy?" "Yes." "Do you have a birth certificate?" "Yes." Good, he said and turned the page. The verdict was announced half an hour later. The court has ruled to designate Emma as the sole legal guardian and mother of the child born under the surrogacy program, denying the plaintiff's claims due to the absence of a pre-birth order and in the best interests of the child. Claire didn't move. Her face remained stony, only her jaw clenched tighter. Derek sat next to her, his head bowed. When the judge left, she simply stood up and said coldly, "This isn't over." She left without looking at me. A few days later, I received another envelope, this time from Derek. A short message, without a salutation. "Claire and I are separating. I still don't know how to feel about it, but I hope he's happy." I put the letter in the same blue folder. Next to it was the hospital discharge form, the court decision, and a photo of Noah in a blanket. A box that reminded me, this is not a war. This is a life that had to be defended. That night, I couldn't sleep for a long time. I opened my laptop again and wrote a letter to my child in a document. "Today the judge said I'm your mom. But I knew that from the first beat of your heart. A year has passed. Noah and I live in Salem, in an apartment with cracked plaster and an old refrigerator that hums as if it were breathing. I found a job, freelance design, small orders. I don't earn much, but it's enough for rent, baby formula, and utilities. Sometimes, when a payment comes in, I smile to myself. I used to work for my career, now I work for us. Noah is growing fast. He laughs so loudly that the neighbors knock on the radiator with a spoon through the wall. He loves it when I put on music, then he dances, holding onto the sofa. His laughter is the only thing that makes me forget everything that was before. We are starting over, step by step. There are no big events, only small victories. When I sleep for 3 hours straight, when he falls asleep without crying, when I have enough money in the store and still have some left over for coffee. Sometimes that's enough to feel alive. Julia is still around. Once a week, she comes with a bag of groceries and says, "These are just discounts. Don't thank me." We watch TV series while Noah is asleep and talk about everything except the courts. She calls him a music lover because he only falls asleep to music. One evening I asked, "Do you think I did the right thing?" She replied without hesitation, "Look at him. The answer is right in front of you." Sometimes I dream about Claire. In my dreams, she is different, not angry, not cold, just tired. In the morning, I wake up and catch myself feeling sorry for her. Then I remember everything and the feeling goes away. One day, I turned on the TV while cooking porridge. On the screen was a familiar face. Claire. An interview on a morning show. Different hair color, new smile. She's pregnant. From a donor, the host said, "A new chance to become a mother." I stood there with a spoon in my hand, and Noah pulled on my robe, laughing. And I felt not anger, but a strange relief. As if now she would finally stop fighting with the past. That evening, I wrote in my letter to the child, "Today I saw your aunt on TV. She looked happy. Maybe now everything will be easier. And we will just live." I cleaned the kitchen, turned off the lights, and stood by the window. The city was falling asleep, a dog was barking somewhere, and someone was arguing about trivial things outside the window. And for the first time in a long time, I felt silence without fear. Just silence. The kind that comes after a storm, when you realize you're still standing. Claire gave birth to a girl 6 months after that interview. I found out by accident. One of my former colleagues sent me a link to a news article. Young entrepreneur Claire M. has become a mother. In the photo, she is smiling, wearing a white dress, holding a baby. Her name, Aurora. I looked at Noah, who was playing with blocks on the floor. 2 lives that should have been one now exist side by side, but separately. And it seemed to me that this was how it should be. A few more months passed. We lived peacefully. Work, kindergarten, evening walks, cartoons before bed. Noah was learning to talk. His first words were "Mama" and more. Every time he said "Mama," I wanted to cry, but I laughed. One morning, I received a message. The number was unknown. "Let the children get to know each other. It's the right thing to do. Claire." I stared at the screen for a long time. I wasn't angry. I just didn't know how to respond. More than a year had passed since the trial. She had never written, called, or asked for anything. And now let the children get to know each other. I showed the message to Julia. She said, "Don't do it. You've just started to calm down." "I know. But maybe Noah has a right to know." She sighed. "You're too good for this world." I hesitated for a long time. Then I wrote, "In the park on River Street. Saturday at 10. It was sunny that day, almost summer-like. We arrived early. Noah played on the playground while I sat on a bench, clutching my coffee cup. When I saw Claire, my heart sank. She walked confidently, the stroller in front of her, Aurora asleep. We greeted each other. No smiles, no warmth, just a formal hello. Children, two little worlds that know nothing about our wars. Noah walked up to the stroller, looked inside, then looked at Claire. "Mommy?" he asked. It was as if I had been doused with cold water. Claire froze. Her eyes flashed, not with anger, but with pain. She leaned down, touched Noah's head, and whispered, "No, sweetheart, I'm not your mom." I didn't intervene. I just stood there and watched them look at each other, him, not understanding, her, unable to bear it. After that, everything changed. Over the next few weeks, Claire began to write more often. "He's so much like me. Maybe you could come over for dinner?" "It's not the children's fault." I replied briefly, politely. But there was something in every message that made me feel uneasy. Too much, he should be mine. Too often the word mom in quotation marks. One evening, I turned off my phone and just sat in the dark, listening to Noah sniffling in his crib. And I realized, calm is not always the end of the storm. Sometimes it's just the silence before the next one. At first, it seemed innocent. Gifts for the holidays. Toys, books, baby things, all from Aunt Claire. Then, messages. Frequent, insistent, no questions, just statements. "I'll stop by tomorrow, I have something for him. Do you mind if I take him for a walk?" I responded cautiously. "Claire, check with me first." "No, I'm not ready for that." But she didn't listen. She showed up at the kindergarten without warning. She stood behind the fence, waving to Noah. The teacher asked several times who she was. I said she was a relative, but eventually had to add, "Don't let her in without me." Then the comparisons began. "Aurora is already speaking in full sentences," Claire said. "And Noah? He understands everything, he's just not in a hurry," I replied. And she smiled that familiar, sharp smile. "I guess we just have different children." Sometimes her voice had the same intonation with which she once said embryo, as if he were not quite human yet. One day I came home and saw a box by the door. Inside was a baby outfit and a book signed, "To my sunny child, Mom." I froze. 3 words. And my world turned upside down again. That evening I wrote to her, "Don't bring anything else without my permission. And don't use the word mom. Noah already has one." She replied a few minutes later, "I just want to be there. You have no right to take away what is mine." I sat on the couch with my phone in my hand while Noah slept next to me. His breathing was even and calm. I felt not fear growing inside me, but a cold hardness. The next day, I met with a lawyer. "This is beyond the pale," she said. "We can issue a formal warning." I nodded. We drafted a letter that spelled everything out: boundaries, contact only through me, meetings according to a schedule and only in the presence of a third party. I delivered it in person. Claire opened the door, looking exhausted. "Are you serious?" she asked. "Yes." She took the sheet of paper and glanced over it. "Are you trying to turn me into a monster?" "You're doing it yourself," I said quietly. I turned and left. It was raining outside. A fine, sticky, autumnal rain. I didn't have an umbrella, but I didn't run. I just walked, feeling the cold seeping under my skin, and thought, better to get wet than to burn again. A week later, a letter arrived from the court. Claire had filed an appeal. I put the envelope on the table without opening it. Noah was sitting next to me, doing a puzzle and quietly humming a song he had heard in kindergarten. I looked at him and realized I wasn't afraid anymore. The fear was long gone. Now the defense begins. When you go through court once, you already know how it works. The cold, the paperwork, the silence. People who only smile when the tape recorder is turned off. This time, I decided to be prepared. Together with my lawyer, we created an archive: evidence, dates, voices. Everything that could be important. I collected correspondence, from the first, "You made a mistake," to the last, "He should have been mine." I recorded calls where she said that I should have thought about it earlier. I added medical documents, doctors' conclusions, certificates from the maternity hospital, copies of court decisions. As I organized these files, I felt a strange sense of relief. Not because I wanted revenge, but simply because for the first time everything had form, order, logic. Finally, it was not a storm of emotions, but a case. The hearing did not last long. Claire's lawyer again spoke of genetic inheritance, breach of conditions, and the moral right of the mother. My lawyer stood up, briefly and calmly. "Your Honor, this has already been decided by the court. There are no new circumstances. There is only an attempt to destroy the child's stability again." The judge reviewed the documents and looked up. "The appeal is denied." The room fell silent. Claire sat upright, but I could see her fingers clenching the edge of the table. She whispered something to Derek, who had come for support. He just lowered his head. After the hearing, Claire didn't write anymore. A month passed in silence. Then two. I even began to believe that it was all over. Then the teacher called. "We noticed a woman standing near the kindergarten a lot. She says she's a relative." I asked if she had said anything to Noah. "No. She just watched." That's when I started to shake for the first time. Not from fear, but from helplessness. I called my lawyer. "We can go to court with a request for a warning." "Officially." "Let's do it," I said. We filed a motion to restrict contact. The court issued a temporary protective order. Claire cannot come within 300 meters of me or Noah without permission. That evening, I opened the blue folder, the same one, and put a copy of the decision in it. Next to Noah's photo from the maternity ward, a letter from Derek, a newspaper clipping. It wasn't just an archive. It was the story of our struggle, told not in words, but in documents. Then there was silence. Complete silence. The phone was silent. There were no messages. Even the lawyer said, "Maybe this is the end." I wanted to believe him. But something inside me told me that this wasn't the end. Claire doesn't just disappear. She retreats, only to return again. And when that happens, I'm not the same person I was then. Now I have an archive of truth. And a life I'm no longer afraid to stand up for. For years have passed. Noah is already a schoolboy. When he runs towards me after school, his backpack bounces as if it is also happy. His first school word, written in capital letters, was Mom. I took that notebook and put it in a drawer, next to the photo from the maternity ward. We live in a small house on the outskirts. I work from home, designing for small companies. The neighbors are friendly. We have a garden with a few blackberry bushes, and every summer Noah calls it our jam field. He laughs often. And that laughter is proof that I did everything right. I haven't seen Claire in years. Her appeals have been rejected, and her name has gradually disappeared from the news. Aurora is already 3, but I never dared to look for photos. I don't want to live through other people's pages. I chose my life quiet, honest, without looking back. Sometimes it seems to me that we have finally reached shore after a long storm. Traces remain: fear, anxiety, fatigue, but we are standing. Michael appeared unnoticed. He is the father of Noah's classmate, divorced, a little older. We met at a school event. He brought extra balloons for the children and then helped carry chairs after the concert. We talked about trivial things: the weather, the program of the performance, how quickly children grow up. A week later, he wrote and asked if we could go for coffee. I was scared. Not because of him, because of myself. After everything that had happened, I didn't trust people who said, "I won't hurt you." But he didn't say that. He just did little things that proved it. He brought Noah a rocket kit because he seems to love space. He cleaned the broken contact on the table lamp. He didn't ask, "How are you?" but "Have you eaten?" And it was unexpectedly warm. Noah, Michael, and I often have dinner together. Michael helps with homework and listens to endless stories about school adventures. When Noah falls asleep, we sit in the kitchen with tea and talk. No plans, no promises, just honesty. Once he asked, "And his father, does he know?" He knows, I said. But he's not involved. Michael nodded and asked no more questions. And I am grateful to him for that silence. I didn't tell him everything. Not because I'm ashamed, but because I don't want the past to become the backdrop for our present. But sometimes, when he looks at me with that gentle smile, I want to tell him everything. About Claire, about the contract, about the courts. So that he knows who he's holding hands with. Maybe someday. But not now. For now, this is enough for me: dinner, Noah's laughter, peaceful nights. Life without constant fear is also love. And then one day, he didn't come to pick Noah up from school. The administration called. We thought you had an agreement. A woman picked him up. She said she was his aunt. I froze. What aunt? My heart sank. She said you warned her. I ran out of the house without even closing the door. Under the windows was Noah's favorite yellow raincoat. And he was gone. For the first time in many years, I felt the same coldness that had once stood between Claire and me. A coldness that smelled of fear. I remember every second of that day. The phone fell out of my hands. My heart was beating in my throat. I didn't scream, I just acted. First, the police. Then the kindergarten, school security, cameras. Everything blurred into one. Flashing lights, questions, signing reports. Someone gave me a glass of water, but I couldn't even hold it. A few hours later, a patrol car found them, an old motel outside of town. Noah was fine. He was sitting on the bed, hugging a teddy bear. When he saw me, he cried quietly, without tears, like a child too tired to be afraid. Claire was sitting next to him. She didn't look guilty, just confused. As the police led her away, she said, I just wanted to be a mother. For one day. I didn't answer. At that moment, something inside me closed for good. At the station, they gave me dozens of documents to sign. After that, I had a short conversation with the officer. We will refer the case to the court. You will need a lawyer and, possibly, a psychologist for the child. I nodded. I felt like I was standing on the sidelines, watching everything from the outside. In the evening, when we returned home, Noah held my hand for a long time. He was silent, then whispered, Mom, I thought you wouldn't find me. I hugged him. I will always find you. Always. The next day, my lawyer and I filed for custody and a restraining order. Everything happened quickly. The system already knew our names. Claire was sent for a psychiatric evaluation, and access to the child was prohibited without a court order. During the hearing, she looked exhausted, older. Her lawyer tried to soften the blow: emotional breakdown, post-traumatic stress. The judge listened, but the verdict was short. No contact until further notice from specialists. I watched as they led her away. Not with triumph, with emptiness. The emptiness that remains after a long war, when victory no longer has any taste. After the hearing, Noah and I went to a family therapist. He is 5, but he already knows that sometimes people who love you can be dangerous. We drew together. He drew the two of us, me, him, and a big circle around us. This is our home, he said. No one can come in here without permission. I couldn't hold back my tears. For the first time in a long time, these were tears of relief, not pain. At home, I took out a blue folder. The last document was the court decision. I put it on top, closed the cover, and signed it with a new marker, the choice box. Inside was our entire past, not as a burden, but as proof that we had survived. I put it on the top shelf, next to Noah's photo from his first day of school. Then I turned off the light, hugged my son, and told him, even though he was already asleep, "You're safe. And this time, it's forever." 10 years have passed. Noah is a teenager now. He's taller than me, talks fast, argues about everything in the world. He wears headphones almost constantly, draws planets, and collects old cameras he finds at flea markets. Sometimes I look at him and think, here he is, the result of all those decisions, pain, trials, and sleepless nights. Living proof that, even from ruins, life can be grown. We still live in the same house. I still work from home, now not out of necessity, but by choice. In the evening, we have dinner together, discuss school, friends, movies. Michael is there. Quiet, stable, without promises that need to be checked. He has become part of our lives the way morning comes, simply and without question. Sometimes Claire writes, once a year, briefly, without pressure. She asks how Noah is. I reply politely, he's fine, studying, growing up. We haven't seen each other in many years. Her letters no longer hurt. They just exist, as a reminder that the past cannot be erased, but it doesn't control you if you don't let it. Aurora has grown up. In her letters, Claire sometimes writes that her daughter knows about her brother, albeit from a distance. Sometimes she sends drawing stars, two children holding hands. I put them in the same folder. Not as evidence, but as part of the story. One evening, Noah was standing at the kitchen table and suddenly asked, Mom, am I a stranger by accident? I didn't understand right away. He looked straight at me, calmly, without offense. Then I took the blue folder from the shelf, the choice box. I opened it and took out an ultrasound photo, a medical bracelet, and an old newspaper clipping. This is your story, I said. But no, you are not a stranger and you are not accidental. I put the photo on the table. You are my choice. Of all the possible paths, I chose this one, I smiled. And I have never regretted it. He was silent, looking at the photo. Is that me? That's you when you were still tiny and just learning to fight. He smiled. I still don't look like them. And that's good, I replied. You look like yourself. That night, when he fell asleep, I stood by the window for a long time. The city was calm, as if after rain. The air smelled of linden trees, and children were laughing on the neighbor's terrace. I thought that maybe this was happiness, not grand, not loud, but ordinary. When everything is finally in its place. I no longer look at the past with fear. Because the life that was once foreign to us has become ours. And it seems finally, truly ours.